Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. My name is Rob Dauster, and I have our official Arkansas Razorback fan here with me,
Right.
and we are going to be breaking down the Texas Longhorns. Uh, I actually, John, I actually like and he's John Martin, by the way, radio host in Memphis, Arkansas fan, confirmed. Uh, I actually like what Rodney Terry has put together here. When you just kind of look at the lineup or the big picture, the roster, what he has. We'll dive into the specifics in a second, but Oregon State transfer Jordan Pope at the point, Tremont Mark, who played at Arkansas last season, was at Houston before that at the two. You got Trey Johnson, a top five freshman coming in. You bring in Arthur Kaluma, Caden Shedrick. You figure at some point he's going to find a way to kind of put it all together, right? Year five, this is finally going to be the year for him, right? They got a couple of Indiana State transfers coming in that are pretty good, and Kendall Weaver is coming back for his junior season. On paper, I really like what this group is and how it looks and how it all kind of fits together.
Yeah, I like certain things about it. I'll say that. Like you said, Pope is a nice addition.
Certain things about it, huh?
Yeah, and I we'll get to what I don't like about it here in just a minute. Um, but but yeah, I think listen, you have something to build on last season. You win a game in the NCAA tournament. You push a Tennessee team that was, I mean, if they don't run into Purdue in the Elite Eight, they very well could be, a Final Four team a year ago. So certainly no shame in the way that team had their season end or their season altogether. But I do wonder, Rob, and this is the biggest question for me is okay, are you building this thing around Arthur Kaluma? Because if this is a deal where you're building it around Arthur Kaluma, yes, I realize he put up really nice numbers last season at Kansas State, and he was really good at Creighton too. But if you sort of peel back a little bit and look at those numbers for Kansas State, um, I saw this. I saw the stat. He was for his size one of the most inefficient players in college basketball last season in terms of like the usage that he got in terms of his actual size. He was actually just one of the more inefficient players in college basketball. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's out there and you can find it. So he also was on a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament last year in Kansas State. So you're getting a high usage, inefficient player last season from Kansas State. Is he going to come in and expect to be the guy, or is he going to come in and sort of fit into a second? I don't want to necessarily say secondary, but is he willing to seed any of that to the guys that are on the roster currently? I think that would be the big question for me because I feel like building around Kaluma in 2024 is not going to get you where you want to be as a program.
Yeah, his for context, his offensive rating was 101.4 on Ken Palm for a guy that had a 23% usage rate, which is not a good number, especially for someone, it's also a little I think it is a little bit skewed when you look at that because a lot of 6'7", 6'8" guys are going to be in and around the basket, right? And he's more
Right.
of like a perimeter oriented player. So I think that that kind of factors in. But you're
That's
not
fair.
wrong. You're not wrong in the sense that he is not his game is not about efficiency. His game is about kind of being a tough shot maker. And I have those, so I have those same concerns. One of the things that I wrote down was that you have a lot of guys that left winning programs and went to a place that were nowhere near as successful the next year, right? Tremont Mark left Houston to go to Arkansas and finish below 500. Arthur Kaluma
Mm.
left Creighton to go to Kansas State and miss the NCAA tournament. Caden Shedrick left Virginia, talked all that shit about leaving Virginia, and then showed up at Texas and averaged 7 and 3 in 17 minutes a game, right?
Yeah.
Um, Jordan Pope at Oregon State. Yeah, we don't need to talk about Oregon State. Those those guys don't need to be driven into the ground anymore. So I have some of those exact same concerns. Like I guess my biggest question is when you put together this roster, one, it's the role allocation, right? I think that that's really a big thing. Like, will Tremont Mark be okay, kind of being a 1A to or a 1B if Kaluma's the 1A and vice versa?
Yep.
Trey Johnson,
Yep.
5-star coming in, is he gonna kind of be okay if he's not like have everything built around him? But the other part is like who's making stuff easy for everybody else? Like Jordan Pope is like he's probably classified as a point guard, but he's not really like a pure set the table. I'm going to make sure everybody else gets easy shots point guard. He's kind of like a scoring. combo that is about getting his shots first. And I think you say the same thing about John Mark. I think you say the same thing about Arthur Kaluma. I think you, to a point, you could say the same thing about Trey Johnson. So there's a lot of relatively high volume and fairly low efficient scorers on this roster. And to me, that is kind of the a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, I think listen, if Rodney Terry can have a season where he establishes all of that, then this team has an incredibly high ceiling. And it's hard to know what exactly to make of preseason projections, but I'll use these as an example. I mean, Bart Torvik's preseason projections have them 11 in the country. Like, to me, that's making a lot of assumptions. I respect the hell out of what Torvik does. It's making a lot of assumptions about fitting in, and I think it's a little tricky because you're basically imputing guys in totally different roles in some cases, right, from teams a season ago, and you're saying, okay, this will be the exact same at this stop. But again, the numbers are smiling on Texas right now. So if Rodney Terry can do that, and obviously there's going to be some opportunities for that with Dylan Mitchell gone and Dylan Dessou is gone, et cetera. Tyrese Hunter, obviously. Then I think this team does have a high ceiling, but I don't think that's a foregone conclusion, Rob, by any stretch of the imagination that you bring it together like that easily, like you said.
Yeah. One guy that I think will be really important is Julian Laird. He's kind of a guy that's known for being a lockdown defender in the backcourt. And I think he's the one guy on this team that you can kind of look at and say, he is a facilitator first, second, and third. Um, is he going to be that level of impact coming off the bench? Is he going to come off the bench if he does start and Jordan Pope comes off the bench? Is that going to be something that kind of messes with the chemistry here? And I guess the bigger question, like once you kind of get past the specific talents and the specific pieces on the roster, I think the bigger question when it comes to Texas basketball is Rodney Terry. His first season was the interim season when I think it's safe to say they outperformed expectations pretty impressively. Um, Year two, I think it's they were kind of in line with what we all thought was going to happen, right? They go 21-13, they go 9-9 in the Big 12, they finish as a 7 seed, they won a tournament game. After a slow start to the offseason, he was able to put together a roster that was good enough to be able to compete with the top of the Big 12, right? Wasn't a great year, wasn't a horrible year, was kind of about in line with what we thought. And I think that this year, to me, there is a ceiling here for being a top 15 team. I think there's also, uh, let me put it a different way. I think that there is top 15 to 20 talent on this roster. I don't
Yeah.
know if I would necessarily have this team to be a top 25 team heading into the preseason because I don't know how well the pieces fit. And to me, that puts a lot of pressure on RT to find a way to be able to make the pieces fit because people aren't going to look at the context. They're going to look at the talent that he has on the roster and say, he wasn't able to get it done, or look what he was able to do with all of these guys that he had.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, Rob. Like, I honestly think we could, and I'm honest with you all the time. By the way, I don't want to. I'm never dishonest. So this is not new, but
Unless you're
um,
talking about Memphis taking foreign trips. That's the only
that's
time.
right. That would I was not being honest with you when I said that we were on our way to a certain. We won't go there. That's off the air. Uh, but I think we could say that what you just said about Rodney Terry in Texas, I honestly think we could probably say that about 50 other teams in college basketball this year, right?
Hmm.
That the new like getting players is going to be like a third of it. Like it used to be like if you could overwhelm people with talent in college basketball, that was enough to get you at least to a certain point. And now I don't think it is because it's the playing field is equalized, right? And so now it's going to be lots of teams every single year going to have 4, 5, 6 new faces, and and what separates them from everybody else is not going to be the paper talent stuff. It's going to be which coaches make this all a come together, b get their guys to buy in and take lesser roles for whatever the case may be, and whoever comes out of that, those will be the teams that we say are in contention for a title or in contention for a Final Four appearance. I would say Texas is one of those teams that if it all looks good and all comes together, you probably will have to put them in that mix. But there's a lot of other teams just like that.
Yeah, it's a really weird dynamic in college basketball right now in the sense that there's a level, I don't want to say a level, it is effectively professional basketball, right? With the size of the contracts that these guys are getting and the NIL stuff and the agents and bouncing around year after year. Like it's very similar to what European basketball is once you kind of get below like Barcelona and Real Madrid and like the top of the top of the top out there. But also these are still college kids who have a dream and an eye and a goal of getting drafted, and they want to be able to go to a place where they have the opportunity to showcase what their ability is. And I think Arthur Kaluma is probably the perfect example, right? Like he was a dude that kind of popped up on draft boards after his first season at Creighton. Second season, he was good, but didn't take the leap they thought. He goes to Kansas State and he was fine and put up good numbers, but there's a reason why he's coming back to college and now he's at Texas. And is it going to be something where he's like, okay, for us to win a championship, for us to compete in the SEC this year, what I need to do is kind of develop
Yeah.
myself defensively, become a 3-and-D guy and a mismatch four that can take advantage of when bigger guys are on the floor, blah, 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 whatever you got to do to win and play a role and do a job and help us win? Or is he going there with the mindset, look, they paid this money for me. I'm coming in. This is my team. I'm going to be the guy. And I think you're probably going to see the same thing with Tremont Mark. You're probably seeing the
Yep.
same thing with Jordan Pope, and being able to navigate those waters. It's much more complicated than it used to be because there's we've never experienced that because once guys ended up going pro, like all these guys 5 years ago, none of these dudes would be here because Tremont Mark,
Right.
Arthur Kaluma, like they're top 100 NBA player, like whatever you want to call it, right? So they'd be overseas getting a paycheck from like I don't know, the second division in Italy and going and making 150K over there instead of making whatever they're making here. So,
Yeah, it's true. And, part of that makes it tough for the Trey Johnsons of the world, and I think, again, talented, no denying that, but you just don't see the young guys make impacts. It's very rare. I mean, it has happened, it does happen occasionally. Like, I think in terms of most impactful guys last year, Jared McCain, right?
mhm,
Jared McCain was kind of like the face, I would say, of the freshman class, well, along with a few others. But it used to be there were 30, 40, 50 freshmen who could come in with 5-star claim, and you'd see him get on the court. A guy like Trey Johnson would be the perfect candidate for that, but like, there's no guarantee for that, and that's why I think it's he's part of the equation for Texas. There's no doubt about it. But I feel like if this was like if we just whoosh back 7 years, we might be a little higher on Texas because like it was easier for younger guys to come in. But now they're going to be behind, and he's going to have to earn that playing time, which just gives them one less piece really to work with.
mhm. All right, let's get to X factors. And as we talk about it in the context with this team, I'm going to say that getting all the pieces to buy in, like we just talked, is not an X factor. That is the factor. I'm going to say that point guard play is not an X factor. It is the factor. Finding a guy to make easy shots. So for me, the X factor of this group is going to be Caden Shedrick, right? Like we saw what he could do in flashes when he was at Virginia, right? He left Virginia after his junior season, transfers to Texas, and talks a really big game when he's on the way over there. He has super high expectations, comes into Austin and 17 minutes a game, 7.7 points, 3.0 boards for a guy that's 6'11 with his level of athletic ability. He's a fifth year senior this year. It's his final, seriously, no kidding. Like he's not coming back. There's no COVID 6 years for him. He's done after this year. It's the put up or shut up season for him. And he has the ability, in my mind, to be, I don't want to say a double double guy, but like a 12-8 dude in the SEC. And
Mhm.
Texas needs him. They don't have a ton of size behind him. It's basically him and Jason Kent, and that's it. So they need him. They need him to be good. They need him to be big, and they need him to live up to that expectation that he had for himself when he left Virginia.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I'm going to roll with Tremont Mark. I think he's obviously somebody who you said his numbers took a big jump last year at Arkansas, but that Arkansas team was an abject disaster. So can you get back to being a productive winning player? We saw it all the time every year at Houston, right? He found that role, happy to average 10 a game, wasn't the first, second, or maybe even third option offensively, but still found ways to impact the game positively and led Houston to a lot of wins. So if he can get back to sort of being that glue guy for Texas, I think again, I think they could realize. Again, I think 11 is a little high for me, but can they realize some top 20 potential? I think that's definitely on the table.
All right, let's talk about the expectations. In the context of the SEC first, and then kind of nationally a little bit. In the SEC, it's the Alabama's the number one team in the conference.
Mhm.
I think everybody knows that. I think even you, as an Arkansas fan, a devoted Arkansas fan, we
I
will
got, I
say.
gotta, I got, I gotta tip my cap, man. It's Alabama for sure. They are as loaded as it gets in all of college basketball.
But once you get past them, I think if you look 2 through 9 or 10 can
Yep,
kind of finish in any order, and I wouldn't be super surprised about it. Like, I think that we're probably looking at, like, Arkansas and Kentucky finishing towards the top of that group, and it would
yep,
be someone like like a Mississippi State, finishing near the bottom of that group. But for the most part, if you would have told me that Mississippi State finishes 13-5 in second place in the SEC, and Texas finishes 9-9, and Ole Miss is 8-10, and then 10th place in the SEC, like all of that stuff would seems like it would probably make a little bit of sense. So, what is a successful season for Texas in your mind, and what can they be, maybe even just outside of the SEC?
um, I would say a successful season for Texas would probably be top four in the SEC because I think it's very gettable. I don't think there's a huge difference between, like you said, that group of Kentucky, and I'm not even as high on Tennessee as others. Like I
Mhm.
think when you consider what they lost this offseason, I know there's some guys that they like, and Zakai is a beast, but I'm not really sold on the rest of it. So I think top four is definitely there for the taking. So I would say a top four finish in the SEC in their first year, and another second round appearance. I mean, it's hard for me to sort of put like, oh, a Sweet 16 or Elite Eight because how long did it take Matt Painter, right? We knew Matt Painter was a good coach. We had this
Mhm.
conversation all the time, but he just didn't have the tournament results to go with it until he did, and now it's like, oh, Matt Painter's amazing. No, he's the same guy. I promise he's the same guy. But I would say, winning a game or two in the NCAA tournament, finishing top four in the SEC would be a very successful season for Texas.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Like, I don't even think they need to win a game, because to me, they kind of, I view them as like one of those 10 teams that are going to be in that like 22 to 32 range in the
Yeah.
preseason polls. And if you're a preseason team, like if you're ranked there in the preseason, you're probably looking at like a 6 to an 11 seed as an at-large bid, somewhere in there. And let's be honest, man, if you're a 6 seed and you play an 11 seed, like that's technically an upset, I guess. But that's more of a coin flip than I think people want to admit. So, for me, just get into the tournament, be in the mix in
Yeah.
the SEC, finish near the top, get into the tournament, win a game, and I think that Rodney Terry can sit there and kind of celebrate it. But I will also say that if it all comes together, like, we could do the offseason grades now. I'm giving them a B plus. Now it's kind of like put up or shut up time. Let's see if you can get all these guys to buy in, because the talent and the ability is there. You got to make these pieces fit, RT. That's what is going to be. He's going to come up against this season.
Yeah, I would say I would be at B minus the plus. I would just be at a straight B because I'm a little more skeptical on Kaluma and that all sort of, again, when your best player is a best player of a team that didn't make the NCAA tournament a year ago, in a power league, it just gives me a little cause
Mhm.
for pause. I'm not saying it has to be the same situation. Arthur Kaluma uh, has gone to Elite Eights before, right? When he was at Creighton, he's been a very very accomplished team basketball player, but I need to kind of see him get back to that for Texas this season. And I think that's the part of it I just don't know on. So I'm going to give him a B. Good off season, not great, but good enough to certainly make a tournament and let the chips fall where they may from there.
Yeah. Just to kind of put that in context for you, now that I'm thinking about it, when Creighton made the Elite Eight, right? Arthur Kaluma was like the fifth guy on that roster. They had Ryan Nembhard at the point, Trey
Right.
Alexander now on a two-way. Baylor Shireman was a first-round pick. Ryan Kalkbrenner is going to be a preseason first-team All-American, or maybe
Yep.
second team. And then you had Kaluma was the next guy. When he goes to Kansas State and he kind of moves up the pecking order, They don't win quite as much. So I think that that is something where to kind of emphasize the point that you were making there. All right, listen, John, this has been fun. These off-season grades, we're going to have about 45 of these during the course of the off-season. They're going to be rolling out all through August and September as we get ready to head into college basketball preview season. It's going to be here quicker than you guys think. Stay tuned. Field of 68 YouTube channel for all of these episodes.